Welcome on to yet another edition of the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. My name is Brad Nadalt. We've got the coach Lindsey Parry with us once again. And today we've got another handful of superb questions from listeners of the podcast. We're going to be talking about flat versus hilly runs. We're going to be talking about long runs for ultramarathons, what to eat the week out before a marathon, how much strength training is too much, and how to plan to run a marathon a year from today. So that's what we're going to be covering. Lindsey, great to catch up once again. I hope things are going well with your build up to your next major.
Yeah, no, absolutely superb. Happy, chuffed. Still a lot of time, so no rush. But as we all know from experience, once you peg an actual goal in the ground, it does go faster than you think it will. And actually, my peak training, let's call it that, is now actually just around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the first question. Don't forget, if you have a question that you would like answered, all you need to do is click on the link that's in the description to this podcast player. We love video questions and we'll filter those to the top. So if you want to have your best shot of getting your question answered on the podcast, make sure you do leave us a video question. You can also send us a voice note, audio voice note. That will work too. Or you can type it out and submit it. The first question is a video question and it comes in from Karine. Let me see if we can get it to play.
Hello, guys. Thank you so much. I love listening to your podcast. I don't know if this question is allowed because I'm 32 and I'm not over 50, but the podcast is very good. And I have a burning question. I am busy training for a 200-mile race. The race is about 12 weeks away. It is a trail run. As part of my training, I am planning on doing a trail run of about 140 kilometers, which is a hiking route, but I'm just going to do it in one go. Hopefully in about 24 hours, potentially longer. I really want to do it to simulate like a very long time on feet and just to have that, I don't know, that mental benefit of staying up, I stayed awake for this long, I can do it, etc., etc. Really, time on feet, and just to have the fatigue and run through it and to practice myself mentally. But I'm planning on doing it, the 140-kilometer run, 10 weeks before the 200-mile race. My question is that too close to race day? Will I have enough time to recover and to continue training? Or am I likely to do more harm than good? I don't have any other time to do it, so that's my only option. And I really, really want to do it, but I also don't want to hurt myself. Thank you very much. If you answer my question, even though I'm not over 50, I would really appreciate it. I love your podcast. Thank you so much.
Lindsey, Karine lost me at 200 miles. That is just, I mean, I'm training for a 56 mile and I'm struggling to wrap my head around it. I don't think I could stay awake for 24 hours. Never mind keep running and staying awake for 24 hours, but 200 miles, wild.
Oh, look, it's a long way. And I will give you some advice that I gave to Jeff Weiss, who's one of my clients who did the Midnight Express in America last year. And I actually, one of the pieces of advice I gave him, because there was quite a tight cutoff, but that if he really started to struggle, that when he got to one of his seconders' cars, that they should push the seat back, he should sleep for 20 minutes, and then and I'd suggest he do it at the car so that someone could wake him up and get him going again. And it did make a big difference. So I think for these kind of events, it's important that there is some sleep that's structured in. So look, I think let's get to the crux of this question, and that is the sensibility or not of doing this 140-kilometer training, run, walk, hike. And the real answer to that question lies in how prepared you are at this point in time. So the thing about doing 100 milers and longer is that there is a much bigger need to be generally well prepared. So what does generally well prepared even mean? It means that you need to be, you physically need to be prepared to really just keep going for a really long period of time. And that mentally you need to be able to keep yourself in the game and keep going, regardless of like things like blisters and a sore knee and all sorts of things that will creep up over this 200-mile journey when you finally get there. So in terms of that 140K, how much damage it's going to do is really where you are lying on that scale of this general preparedness of being really physically strong. So I think people grossly underestimate what an advantage it is to be just really physically strong, strength training, lots of quads, lots of glutes, lots of hamstring, lots of upper body strength too, because you've got to carry a lot of the things yourself. Even if you are seeing seconds along the way, you probably want to be using some form of hiking pole. So you just really want to be incredibly physically strong, and you want to work on that. Okay. So depending on exactly how physically strong you are and how physically fit you are, because in essence, you can't, once we get to ultramarathon and preparing for ultramarathons, doing much more volume on top of that starts to become really impractical because you just can't survive the training. Okay. And I think that's really the crux of your question here, is like, how much damage is that single hit of 140 kilometers going to do on me? And the answer to that question is that it really depends. So it is in all likelihood going to chew up your feet, and it's going to cause some physical damage to you that's not necessarily related purely to muscular soreness, tendons, ligaments, knees, but more to the chafing and the sunburn and the blisters and the bruising and sore feet. And so there will be some payback that's required post that. But if you don't really have a fixed time, I mean, you'll have a little bit of time limitation here, because I'm guessing you probably got to work a job or family that you need to get back to, so you can't do the 140 Ks over 3 days. Although depending on the nature of that route, is that might actually be a good way to go about this, and to split this into 3 days of 40 Ks a day. If that is something that is possible, that might actually be a better way of physically preparing you for the 200-mile challenge. And then back to Brad's point, really, is that when you get to that 200-mile challenge, is if there are opportunities that present themselves for taking short naps, restarting after those naps is very difficult. Everything seizes up, everything is sore. However, it only takes 5 to 10 minutes of that discomfort after you've had a nap or a longish sit down to feel okay again. But that proper sleep with a proper fueling, and that sleep allowing your body to really absorb that fueling, the difference that makes is that 5, 10, 15 minutes of discomfort is absolutely worth it to keep you going for that 200 miles. So the first thing is, I would say, is if you can split that 120 up, I would, even if it's split up into over 2 weekends. 140. So even if it's 70 and 70, but again, it is a hiking trail, so that may not be practically possible in terms of getting into the mountain and out of the mountain and that sort of thing. But if not, don't put a 24-hour time limit on it. Like, really take your time if you can. If you can split that over 2 days even, and have proper sleep in between, do it. And take the time to stop often and look after your feet. I think your bigger problem than the physical bruising and soreness and all that, particularly if you do lots of hiking and a little bit of running, it's more the actual abuse on your body and the physical wounds that you may need to clean. But if you keep everything clean, regularly clean socks, gaiters, look after your feet, then your training afterwards, because the training again is just it needs to be at such a low intensity. It needs to be about keeping going, lots of walking, lots of strength training, training with a pack. Then that lower intensity training after the 140 means that it shouldn't do too much damage if you just do it in the right way.
I have to. Ultra runners are a different breed, Lindsey. I a couple of years ago, and I don't know if you remember this, but I'd run a few ultras and decided that I was really keen on doing a 100-miler. And there's a famous one here in South Africa called the Washi. And you and I were doing a trip around the country. We were doing various talks at different running clubs. And one of the talks we had to do was we couldn't get to the town where this talk was, and it was on the Washi route. So we flew into the closest town and we ended up driving the Washi route. And I was huge mouth. I was yapping. I'm so keen to do this thing until I got on the route. And it's not a trail one. It's literally run on one of our national roads. It's horrendous. There's trucks. It's terrible. And the further we got into this thing, the faster I decided 100 milers on for me. And I've never done 100 miler. So if you're ever in doubt, go and drive the route if you can, because that'll get you out of it. So that is for sure. Next question from Daniel Wright in Singapore. Lindsey, Daniel says, hi, Brad and Lindsey. I have a marathon coming up next weekend, and I'm wondering what my nutrition should look like the week leading up to the race. Are there any specific foods or strategies you'd recommend to ensure I'm properly fueled and ready to perform at my best?
So this is one of my favorite questions, Brad, but it's one with possibly one of the simplest answers. And the answer to that question is to really keep your nutrition as close as you can to what you are used to. Now, when we travel to races, that's nearly impossible because most of us are staying in hotels, eating in restaurants. So we can't eat exactly the same. But I really try to stick to the types of foods and the similar quantity. So the reality is that as we hit that last week, our the amount of calories that we burn tanks because we are doing very little exercise in that last week in preparation for the marathon. So what I don't like is for people to get into those last 2 to 3 days and get into this carbo loading, consume as many calories as we can because we need them for the race mindset. It's very stressful on the body, number one. And number two, there's just an excess. And whenever there's an excess, our body just converts that excess and stores it as fat, which is not particularly helpful on race day because we have enough fat stores for race day for the most part. So try and stick to what works for you and that you have been doing day-to-day training. So that means if you are looking at restaurants in and around where you're staying, choose restaurants that serve the types of things that you eat, be that chicken breasts and vegetables and rice or fish and potatoes. If spaghetti and whatever variety of condiments that go with spaghetti are the kind of things that you enjoy, then you can absolutely have pastas and enjoy them, but don't go and have an extra big pasta meal the night before because you've read that carb loading is great for marathon running. Normal diet, normal types of foods, things that your gut is used to, well hydrated, particularly if you've traveled far to get there. Even if you try and consciously hydrate while you're traveling, you typically arrived in a dehydrated state. So just having a little bit of, not a little bit, just really an emphasis on drinking loads of fluids. Not much alcohol. So if you are someone who's used to consuming small amounts of alcohol through the week, do that. I know tons of people that just have to have a glass of wine or a beer the night before a race. So that is, if that's part of what you normally do, that's fine. But 3-4 beers, half a bottle of wine, that's not a good idea in the evenings leading up to race day. But yeah, I mean, that's as simple as it is, Brad. Try and stick to what you know. Try and practice. Now it's too late because he's asking in the last week, but for the next marathon, try and get a routine together in terms of pre-run nutrition that you practice during your training so that on race morning you can once again eat stuff that you are used to that you know your stomach can cope with, that you know will provide you with good nutrition for the early stages of the race. And then, of course, hopefully you've worked on your nutrition strategy and have been practicing that during training for race day.
I'm chuckling, Lindsey, because you are super optimistic. You're saying that there will be another marathon. I can tell you now, at some stage on the weekend, Daniel, you are going to say never again. I'm not doing one of these things again, but you will be back. That's just the way we are. We, as humans, I think we forget pain fairly quickly, and we sort of live and bask in our glory for a long time after something like this happens. So best of luck for your marathon. I hope it goes according to plan. Lindsey, next question from Liam Carter in Birmingham, Alabama. Liam says, I know you often recommend 3 strength sessions per week. We always say 3's ideal, 2's better than 1, and 1 is better than none. He said, but I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to add an extra strength session focused specifically on glutes and hamstrings. Is there a point where doing more than 3 strength sessions a week becomes counterproductive, or would an additional lower body focused workout be a good idea? Would love to hear your thoughts. If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsey and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
So it would depend, is the answer to that question. So much like just adding more running doesn't always lead to the results that we want and has unintended consequences, doing just more strength training for the sake of it is exactly the same. So it would depend on how your overall week looks and how much of that glute and hamstring work you are actually doing in the week. So if you are doing glute and hamstring work in all 3 of the existing sessions, then a 4th is probably not going to give you the outcome that you are hoping for, because where are we going to put it so that it doesn't interfere, because we need to recover from those strength sessions. So now if we need to recover from strength sessions, then where do we put this workout in so that it doesn't compromise our running, because we also need to now recover from this particular session. So my gut is telling me in this instant that that is not the answer. However, if there's a specific need to work on glute and hamstring strength, I would simply do a little bit more glute and hamstring work in one of the existing workouts. So if there's only one exercise for glute and one exercise for hamstring, probably benefit more from doing 2 and 2 in a designated session rather than doing its own standalone session and increasing the overall load on the week and complicating how we then go about structuring the rest of the week.
Brilliant question, Liam. Thank you so much for that. If you have a question you'd like answered, don't forget to click on the link that's in the description of this podcast. Lindsey, next one comes in from Sarah. Sarah's actually just joined the Coach Parry training app. She says, I'm new to the program, still getting the training dialed in, and I've watched a lot of the videos, and I'll admit I've fallen into the most common pitfalls that trip up older runners, not running their easy runs to easy enough, not prioritizing rest, neglecting strength training, and still trying to train like I'm 30. Sarah says, I live in a very hilly area, though I sometimes drive flatter routes for variety. Right now, I'm following a maintenance plan before transitioning into a half marathon plan soon. When I run hills, I have to slow down significantly and sometimes even walk to keep my heart rate within the recommended range, which is a big mindset shift for me. As a result, my pace on the hills is much slower than what is prescribed. On the downhills, my pace naturally speeds up since the effort feels easier and my heart rate drops. When I run on flat terrain, I find it much easier to keep both my pace and heart rate steady. Is there any difference in aerobic development between training on rolling hills versus flatter terrain? I've always considered myself a strong hill runner and worry that walking the hills might diminish that strength. Would adding specific strength exercises help maintain my hill running ability?
So the easiest part of that question to answer is right at the end, and the answer is yes. So strength training will absolutely help your hill running ability and help you to defend that strength. So keep that as a strength of running uphill. And then something that I'm starting to think is that I probably need to explain again through videos and on the platform itself a little bit better, Brad, is that when we put these recommended pace ranges in to help people to dial in on the right intensity for them as individuals, there is no way that there is a similar relative intensity when we run uphill, when we run flat, and when we run downhill. So if the recommendation is to run 9.5 minute miles to 10, 15 miles running as an easy run, then when we're running uphill, that is going to be more like 10:30 to 10:50 when we're going uphill. And when we're going downhill, it's probably going to be closer to 9:15 to 9:30. And then when we run on the flats, it's probably going to be in the region of 9:40 to 9:55. And all of those paces will then end up at a very similar relative intensity. Okay. So it's absolutely normal to be much slower when you're going uphill, much faster when you're going downhill, and then to find it very manageable when you're running on the flats. Okay. So your aerobic development, if you keep your heart rate in the place where it's supposed to be, your targeted zone 2 heart rate zones, your aerobic development will be incredibly similar, whether you are doing hilly terrain or flat terrain, even if you are walking quite a lot on the hilly terrain. Okay. Those walks, and particularly as you stick to this kind of training, those walk breaks will become shorter and shorter and shorter, and you'll learn how to control your pace on the hill so that your heart rate doesn't drift into those numbers. So there'll be a learning from you. That means that you'll be more moderate in your approach to that hill, and therefore your heart rate won't climb as fast. And secondly, by doing all this training in that aerobic zone, you are going to be better suited to running up hills, and therefore your pace will increase slightly, that you're able to handle at that. Or probably the short-term gain will just be, like I said, fewer walk breaks until you hopefully eradicate them. But even if you don't worry, aerobic development will be fine. In the short term, there is some advantage to keeping on the easier route so that you keep more control and so that you build your confidence a little bit better. But in the long term, I would keep a mixed terrain. So I would do those hills that are good for you, that are going to help you keep that strength, even if there is walking involved. And then the only other time I'd perhaps look at changing that is if you are preparing for a race that is very flat. It does pay to do a lot of your longer training runs on the flat so that you can prepare your body for the monotony of just having a very singular stimulus over the duration of, in particular, a marathon. So yeah, then there'll be some benefit to doing more training on the flats, but do the hill training, moderate your effort uphill, expect to be slower going uphill. That's no problem.
Cool stuff. Sarah, thank you so much for submitting that question. Before we get into the next question, a quick shout out to Jason Snyder, who shared our episodes on the Recovery Masterclass on his Instagram stories. Jason, what we're going to do is we're going to send you a Coach Parry cap. Thank you so much for doing that. Really do appreciate it. Lindsay, question from Tom Richardson. Tom's in Dublin in Ireland. Tom says he's running or planning on running the London Marathon in 2025. That's his goal, which is still quite a way away. What's the best training strategy when your goal race is that far in the future? Should he be structuring his training differently at this stage? What would you recommend scheduling other races along the way to help keep him motivated? And if so, how far apart should they be? He said, right now I'm in a bit of a lull since my last training plan ended after a recent half marathon that he was preparing for. He says, I don't want to stay in this phase too long, but I also don't want to burn out too early in the build-up to London Marathon. What would the ideal 12-month training approach look like leading up to the marathon? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so Brad, 12 months, obviously, very long time. So it would be a very different approach to a lot of things. But the most important thing is that we do want to be consistent. So we don't want to not train because we don't want to arrive 12, 14, even 20 weeks out and we've done no training. We've gotten completely unfit. We're starting over again. Okay. A year gives us plenty of time to potentially focus on a different goal, training for a different kind of race, and to give ourselves some short breaks in between so that we can recover from those both mentally and physically, because that's one of the fears here. So in a scenario like that, there are probably 2 to 3 different ways that you could approach this. So the first way you could approach is to say, right, I want to see just how well I can do at London Marathon. And that then means looking at my half marathon, seeing how that performance was. Did I get to my potential there? What does my potential look like right now based around that half marathon for London? And how can I shift that before I get to London? So in a scenario like that, you would look to be doing 3 training cycles, and the third of those training cycles would land you smack at London. So the first 2 training cycles could be going 5K, 10K, maintenance, London, 10K half marathon, maintenance, London, something along those lines. So I would set myself some shorter term goals if it was me personally. One of those goals would be to create the habit, get consistent, lay a fabulous platform from general fitness. And then my secondary goal would be like, okay, 5 or 10K, let's see what we can do there, how fast we can get in the short term, because when we train like that, our volume doesn't go too high. Therefore, our training load and our mental training load doesn't go too high. Then I would go back into like a shorter maintenance phase, and then into my 12-week plan into London. The alternative would be to really just spend 6 to 9 months laying the biggest foundation you've ever laid, following a very general training plan that allows me to work on some coordination through drills and some basic speed work by keeping moderate training volumes over a longer period of time. But I feel like that kind of approach, while it might be successful and it might lay a great foundation, that can be quite boring and difficult to stay motivated to keep yourself training for a very long period of time. So I'd rather get going on a maintenance plan, do a little bit of coordination now, lay a little bit of a foundation, then set myself 1 to 2 specific targets that I'm going to achieve over a 12 to 15 week period, then go back into another short maintenance period, again working on that coordination and a little bit of speed work, and then I'll have a very good idea of what I'm capable of and work towards that for the marathon.
Yeah, Lindsey, I must say I am a little bit jealous, and I'm sure you feel the same about London Marathon. Both of us have run it. It is such a great event. If you ever get the opportunity to run London, take it with both hands. It is incredible. Tom, all the best with your build-up. If you do need some assistance, be sure to check out the Faster Beyond 50 master plan here on coachparry.com. And Lindsey, I guess that's one thing I love about the way our training plans are structured in those 12-week blocks, that you can take a year like that and as you just said, build out those building blocks almost like you're playing with Legos, essentially. In the build-up to a marathon, and it definitely does work a charm. So you can step up, step down, work on different things, which is quite cool. As always, Lindsey, great to catch up. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget, if you haven't liked or subscribed to this podcast yet, make sure you don't miss out on any episodes. You can do that right now on whatever platform you are listening, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, from the two of us, it's cheers.
Ooh, see you in a week's time.